Hey guys, welcome back my lovely goat loving friends. My name is Dulcie. It's nice to meet you. If you ever sign up for any of my email goodies, you can find the links for those below. You'll get an email from me telling you just a bit more about myself, and I ask you to tell me a bit more about you. And I actually mean that. It's nice to know that there are real live humans on the other side of the screen. You know, Faith and I were just talking, and she told me that they had all of my goats had been talking, and they love the spotlight of being in these videos so much, of course. But really deep down, they love your goats too, and just absolutely love that they can help out in such a big way in keeping other goats healthy too. And really, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for a friend. Even if that friend is kind of long distance and you have never really met them, so to speak. So they decided that they were going to provide some really good content for me to teach about. Like my last video that you could watch after this one about Eva not feeling well and me working through what it's like to just figure out what's wrong with your goat when they're acting sick or acting off. Isn't that sweet? And now I need to treat for lice. I looked under the microscope to see what these buggers actually look like. But I can tell you that I can see them moving with my naked eye, and they move and they're making my goats itch. Now, we live up north in good old Montana. It's the first part of March and it's been a long winter. These gals have been safe out of the wind, snowstorms, and just the general winter weather in this barn that I'm in here, which has been wonderful. But it's also close quarters. I use the deep litter method and haven't done any spring cleaning because it's not spring yet. And so I guess these lice made the 900-mile march to our barn. How do lice get anywhere? I mean, wouldn't it be interesting to have like a GoPro attached to one of them to see how it gets from one area to the next and from one host to the next? Because lice that affect goats are what they call host specific, which means they only attack goats or sheep. So these are lice. How did a louse make the trek from hundreds of feet away if in fact my one and only neighbor who has goats and her goats have lice? No, I'm not saying that hers do. I'm just saying, do they fall out of the sky like I think slugs do? Do they hitch a ride? Do they teleport? Whoa, Dulcie. Whoa, okay, focus. Now, before I go on, I'd like you to comment below. Have you ever had a parasite on your goats? What kind was it and what did you do about it? I would love to know. Okay, parasites, let's talk about the types of external parasites that can affect goats. So there's sucking lice and biting lice, the nose botfly, keds, mites, fleas, ticks, and flies. I'm suddenly starting to feel really itchy. In my research, I did somewhat answer my question about how lice get around. Usually lice are introduced into your herd by bringing in an infested animal, but some lice may move from place to place by clinging to flies. We haven't brought any new goats onto our property recently, for a really long time actually, and we don't have flies this time of year, so I'm sticking with the teleporting theory. Like I said about winter, late winter and the early spring is usually when louse infestations reach their peak. And when your goats are in smaller areas because of winter, this can help keep the population booming. So crowded conditions can affect this. Animals that are under stress will usually have a larger infestation, and low energy diets can also help make this be a problem as well. So if you're wondering what a goat with lice will look like, this is what you'll usually see. They may have dull, matted coat. They'll be excessively scratching and grooming themselves. And this scratching sometimes will cause them to have like raw areas on their skin and even hair loss. You may also see your goat lose weight. Their milk production may even be reduced up to 25%, and in severe cases, they can cause anemia. The first type of lice are the biting lice, and they eat on the particles of hair, the scabs, and the skin. And the sucking lice actually pierce the goat's skin and draw blood. From what I saw under the microscope of what I collected off of these goats, I can tell that what they have are biting lice. Now, you can't just treat a goat once, because there's this whole lovely life cycle involved. Your first treatment may kill all of these adults, but then the louse eggs, the nits actually hatch, and then they start the cycle all over again. So a second application of treatment is needed 2 weeks after the initial treatment to allow the eggs to actually hatch so that you can get the adults. I'm going to quickly go over a couple more parasites that can affect your goats before I go into some treatment plans. The nose bot flies are potentially another problem in goats. It's really gross. Basically, a nose bot fly deposits a live larva, a maggot, into the nostril of the goat, and then these guys go up and down inside your goat's head, sinuses, and nasal passages and cause a lot of damage. Your goats will have extensive shaking of the head, loss of appetite, and will grate their teeth if they have nose spots. You may also notice that they may have blood flecks in their nose boogers. Ivermectin is really effective against all of the stages of this particular larva. Okay, moving on to keds. They are also known as sheep ticks. They are a wingless fly that spends their entire life cycle on a goat. They're passed on to the next goat by actual physical contact. They're usually just found on sheep, but goats can be affected by them. They're a grayish brown, have 6 legs, and have a broad, leathery, flattish, sack-like abdomen covered with short, spiny hairs. These icky things have sharp mouth parts and suck blood, much like a mosquito does. So this can cause a lot of irritation, biting, and scratching. Again, these buggers can cause anemia, and they usually cause the most problems in the winter months. Mites are another problem for goats. The goat follicle mite will actually cause mange. This is where the hair follicles and the glands, the gland ducts become obstructed and produce swellings. And the mites actually end up getting trapped inside these lesions, and then these lesions continue to get larger as the mites multiply. They do spread from close contact between the goats. Another mite burrows under the skin and into the skin, and the ear mange mite causes lesions on or inside the ear of your goat. If one of your goats has mites, you will want to treat your whole herd. Fleas are a small wingless insect that move a lot by jumping from animal to animal and from place to place. They're only on the goat long enough to get a blood meal. The eggs are laid on the goat, and then they fall and drop to the ground, and then they hatch in 2-ish days, and then they stay in that bedding, and then after they're an adult flea, they're ready for their first meal in 24 hours. Fleas can cause anemia in goats, so be watchful for that. Ticks can be another problem. They bite your goats. They take their blood and they pass on diseases. So keep your guineas around and keep an eye on your goats, especially around their horn areas, like at the base of their horn, their ears, their armpit areas, any places that they like to get tucked under. Okay, so now, what am I going to do about these lice? I really like to treat my family and animals as naturally as possible, if possible. But I'm not opposed to using something stronger if it comes to that. But what I'm going to do today is use apple cider vinegar on my goats. What worries me is that this time of year, I don't want my goats soaking wet. As you can see outside, we're having gale force winds. It's been like this for the past 3 or so days, and it isn't very fun. It's warmer outside. It's maybe in the 40s right now, but that wind is blowing. So what I have here is apple cider vinegar in just a spray bottle. The vinegar helps to loosen the glue that holds the nits in place. Now nits are the eggs of the lice. And then I'm going to spray the goats all over and then comb them with this flea lice brush that I picked up. After they're dry, then I'm going to dust them with diatomaceous earth. This stuff is so sharp that it actually cuts the bodies of these awful parasites and actually causes them to dry out and die. I will need to do this throughout the next couple of weeks because remember, the eggs will keep hatching, and if they hatch and then reproduce and lay eggs, then this life cycle just will keep going. So it's about a 2-week life cycle that needs to be stopped. And one of the most important things that you will need to do and that I'll need to do, or they'll just keep this infesting your goats and keep this life cycle going, is to treat the area that they spend their most time in, their beds and where they lay down. If you don't do that, then you may get the lice off your goats, but then the ones that are in their houses, in their bedding, will just crawl back up on them when they're laying down. As usual, you will need to write your treatment plan down in your goat binder, write the dates and what you did and when you need to do treatments again. This will just help you to keep track of when it's most likely to happen in your area and what is the most effective treatment for you, for your goats in your area. Now, if you have tea tree oil, you can add it to the treatment as well. I don't have any right now, so I'm just going to go with what I have. Just know that in all of this, you don't want to let this get too bad on your goats. As I already mentioned, these parasites can cause anemia in goats, and that can be deadly. But don't beat yourself up over this either. It's a very common problem to have in goats and any livestock. And it just takes a little bit of work to get rid of. Alright, I've pretty well covered her with the apple cider vinegar. You know, it's one of those things, I don't want to get them too wet either. I don't want them to get chilled. So I guess in this, I'm going to use my best judgment, and when you do it as well, use your best judgment. They don't have a lot of loose hair, but a little bit of it, and some hay. They've got hay in their coats. But I'm going to put all of the little bits of hair in just a bucket here, so I'm just not like letting it spread around, and then I will take it and dispose of it. Not that you'd be able to see this, but I do see one little wiggling thing there. So yes, I see that this brush is getting some of them off of her. I've done quite a bit of brushing now, and so I am going to now do some diatomaceous earth. Now it is really important to not let big clouds of dust of this diatomaceous earth to get in the air so that you or your goats are breathing it in. So you do want to be really careful. So I'm not going to be being wild about this, but I am going to get it on my goat and work it into so that it is getting close to, you know, the skin, so that I will work it in there. So I'll be honest, I don't have anything special. I just have a little scoop. I don't have anything that's going to dust it because I don't really want it to be dusting in the air. I'm just going to sprinkle it on my goat. Okay, now I'm just going to work it so that it works inside and isn't just on top. Because otherwise it would just potentially blow away, especially out in this wind. So I'm going to work it in. Got to go slow because it does kind of jump, you know, puff up just a bit. Just like the scratches. The hardest part is under the belly, but with this, I just have it full inside this little scoop, and I'm just rubbing it and putting a little bit on my hand, and then rubbing it onto her belly. You will also want to make sure that you get up on the top of their head and in that area too, because a lot of times that's where they can be found. You'll find them scratching up there on top of their head, so just be careful when you put it up there. Go slow. Okay, so there's really not many places on her body that I haven't gotten it worked into. So we're gonna start with this, and I'll come back. Well, I'll be watching them every day. I'll be looking at them. But it'll be something that I'll just need to stay on top of and just make sure that that this life cycle has been broken. In the past when I've had this, like it was a couple years ago, from my memory, I remember that I did the diatomaceous earth and it was closer to spring than it is now. And it just, they didn't have a problem with it. So I have confidence that we'll get this under control and the goats will be good to go. Okay, on to the next goat. This is Olivia. I'm going to spray her down and just go through the same process. Watch this. Oh, look at that. Oh, that feels so good. Oh, yeah. Oh, right there. Okay. I have doused her, brushed her. Now I'm going to do the diatomaceous earth. I was thankful to read that although diatomaceous earth is so harmful to bugs with exoskeletons, that it is not harmful. Isn't that funny? It's not harmful to worms. So I was very glad to hear that because I am a worm girl too. So you don't want to harm your worms, but it's funny that something so sharp can hurt something with a hard shell and not hurt something that's so soft and plushy. Alright, we have got Faith up here. Getting her sprayed down and doing her. Alright, so I'm going to work in some diatomaceous earth on Faith now. This is our littlest one, Opal. So we're going to do Opal now. She was born this last spring. So thank you for watching. If you enjoy this kind of information, give this video a thumbs up as usual. I love your comments and I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. So thank you for watching, thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.